Assistons-nous aux prémices d'une nouvelle guerre froide dans le cyberespace? C'est la question de géopolitique que nous allons développer dans ce nouveau numéro de Cyber News, l'émission mensuelle du FIC. A tout de suite. Si Internet et le cyberespace ont longtemps été considérés comme des biens communs, aujourd'hui, tout semble aller dans le sens inverse. Unilatéralisme croissant, militarisation de l'espace et du cyberespace, le monde numérique se fragmente et se divise, tant sur les plans techniques qu'informationnels. Les cyberattaques se multiplient, destruction, espionnage, sabotage, mais aussi manipulation de l'information et influence. Nombre de ces attaques sont menées et même financées par des États. Alors cette nouvelle conflictualité est-elle réellement inéluctable? Élément de réponse avec notre invité.
Accidental war or inadvertent confrontation usually has at least four principles or four factors related to it. A state can fundamentally misunderstand the red lines of another state. What do they consider to be their essential national interests? A state sometimes will misunderstand the intent of another state, misidentify the nature of a state's cyber forces. Finally, I might miscalculate the second and third order effects of a cyber operation. The so-called like-minded group of liberal democracies is intent to say that current international law sufficient. Countries like Russia and China want to have a new treaty. In between these two positions is a negotiated position, which is that of agreeing on norms of behavior. Norms are effectively the rules of the road of state operations in cyberspace. They are basically soft law. They're interpretations of existing international law there. And these norms can be quite fundamental, such as states promise not to interfere with other states' critical infrastructure. The answer here is that a violation of the norm can also help reinforce a norm. Simply by all of us coming together and saying, that was bad behavior, that should not have happened, we are all agreeing that this norm needs to continue. Of course, if you keep on violating a norm continuously and there's no action, there's no punishment as a result, then the norm will fail. Therefore, what we are increasingly seeing at the UN level, but also within the EU, are actions towards micro-sanctions. We'll see a lot more of this in the future because effectively the only way to reinforce a norm is basically make sure that a norm violation has consequences.
La crise du Covid-19 a mis en lumière les tensions et les conflits de plus en plus durs qui agitent le cyberespace. On constate notamment une polarisation croissante entre quelques acteurs qui cherchent à s'imposer comme les nouveaux maîtres du jeu.
States have been leveraging cyberspace in pursuit of geopolitical goals for decades. Regional powers and great powers alike exploit the vulnerabilities in the space and the cracks in democratic societies to undermine democratic institutions, to threaten our critical infrastructure, and generally erode our national and collective power. Today, the most dangerous state-sponsored malicious cyber activity, from my perspective, is that systematic degradation of democratic institutions via cyberspace. For me, is the increasingly problematic probing into critical infrastructure. What could lead to accidental escalation is, like I said, the continual efforts by nation states to create access to one another's critical infrastructure, often with no real intent to attack or manipulate during peacetime, but nonetheless to create access in, pursuit of potentially future operations. Potentially just, a wrong stroke of the mouse or a wrong key click could cause some sort of damage. Obviously not meaning to, but potentially leading to escalation. Successful deterrence depends on four factors. A clearly communicated threat, the threat must be credible, and then a sufficiently powerful threat. And then the final piece of the puzzle for deterrence to work is reasonable assurance that the threat will not come to fruition if the undesired action doesn't take place, right? There has not been a major cyber operation that's caused thousands of deaths or millions of dollars in property damage or frankly, escalated tensions between rival nations to the point of armed conflict. Not yet. So with that context, arguably deterrence is working at this higher level of activity. Nonetheless, deterrence requires constant attention to maintain its effectiveness. It's clearly not working to prevent states from undermining democratic institutions. The Cyberspace Solarium Commission, on which I'm a staff member, outlined a strategy for deterrence in cyberspace. We called this strategy layered cyber deterrence. The central idea behind layered cyber deterrence is to increase the costs and decrease the benefits that adversaries anticipate when planning cyber attacks against American interests or European interests.
Voilà, c'est la fin de cette émission. Rendez-vous au FIC. À très vite.